Africa had great kings and queens you should know. Search your history, it will show. If you know not from whence you came, you are doomed to live in shame. Great kings of
Africa. Central campus out there, and the license committee. 2 student groups that are responsible for bringing our guest speakers today. Also, we will have a question and answer session following the speech. Before we begin, I want to bring up the national representative for the Honorable Elijah Louis Farrell. They have 2 words for
Thank you very much. I'd like to just make a few comments. Start this document. My name is Kwame. I'm the African representative of Minister Louis Farrakhan, based in the country of Ghana, West Africa. This July will be 6 years that I've been living in Africa. And when I first moved to Africa, it was Brother Kwame Ture, who would come over from Guinea, Sicily, and getting the lay of the land. Though I have traveled in Africa quite extensively, I have not lived in Africa. And so, as most of you know, Kwame Ture is fighting a medical battle. And tomorrow night, while he's here in Atlanta, we want to do an appreciation rally for him at the Arts Fellows Hall. And because Kwame is such a dear and close friend to me, because of his years of hammering me about Africa, and saying that eventually y'all will set up in Africa. And lo and behold, in 1990, we did open an office in Africa, which in 1994 we had our annual convention in the country of Ghana, the capital of Accra. Kwame Ture was there. And it began a movement on the African continent that ended with Minister Farrakhan's world tour, where he visited 19 countries and was received on the African continent very warmly and openly by the heads of states in those countries. And I must say that it all began with Kwame Ture in 1972 hammering us about Africa, and that the future of the black people, the connection of Africans in the diaspora and those at home, was important for the future of African people. And so I would hope tomorrow that you would take a few minutes to be with us. It's tomorrow evening. There's a letter on the table outside that will give you the information and the location. And we're looking for those friends of Kwame who went to Howard with him, who struggled in the civil rights movement here in the South, to be out with us tomorrow evening to give our brother a fitting tribute before he leaves the country for medical treatment. So I thank you very much for this time. Those who cannot make it, excuse me, one other thing, if you can't make it tomorrow night, there's an envelope on the table. Please take the envelope with you, and there's a mailing address that you can show your support for our brother. Thank you very much.
Now, the brother I'm about to introduce to you, to lead your introduction, because he's one of the most respected black activists. He's one of the most respected because he was organizer and chairman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or SNCC, the student group that helped overthrow segregation in the South. He helped SNCC organize the first Black Panther Party in the United States to challenge the Southern Democratic Party's oppression of black people and to make America a true democracy for all people. He helped start the Black Power movement, and his beliefs in our right to defend ourselves against racist brutality inspired the founding of the Black Panther Party for self-defense. Like most human rights activists, he has been in prison many times just for his defiant activism. So he has struggled for all of us. He is the chairman of the All-African People's Revolutionary Party, and their mission is to create a worldwide liberation among all black people. And right now, I want to take a moment to thank him for everything he has done for our people. This man, he's about unity and making Pan-Africanism a reality and not a dream. And I also want to thank him for writing Black Power and Stokely Speaks. These 2 books, I think everybody needs to read. A lot of negative things been said about this brother, but these 2 books just destroy all our lives. So I want all of you to give a warm welcome to an intelligent, courageous African, a true revolutionary activist, Mr. Kwame Ture.
morning, in the first instance, I asked you to excuse my seat, but as you know, I am recuperating from illness. When I was a young man, a very young man, about a little bit older than you in Tanzania, about 1967, I read a book that my memory serves me correctly. It was by an Englishman by the name of, I think, Dekab. And the book was called Red Star Over China. It was a story of the history of the Chinese Communist Party struggle for power, being led by the great humanist Mao Zedong. And at that time I didn't have malaria, but in the book there was a battle, and Mao Zedong, the leader of the Communist Party, had malaria. And for 3 days he had to direct his troops to a stretcher. So a long time ago, so I said, oh, well, if Mao Zedong can direct a battle from a stretcher for 3 days, I can certainly sit in a chair and try and raise consciousness for a couple of people. So we want to excuse our seat. We want to thank Brother Tim for the beautiful introduction. We've been given 2 themes. One, a larger theme, which is divergent backgrounds, common ground. And the second one from the African Student Association here, from civil rights to black power to Pan-Africanism. We propose to tie them both up by starting first with Pan-Africanism and moving backwards. Pan-Africanism is the total liberation and unification of Africa under scientific socialism. This is Pan-Africanism. We want to emphasize in the very beginning that all Pan-Africanists must be socialists. All right, after having defined it, we want to show you why we arrived there, and to let you know that arriving at this Pan-Africanism as this definition was a result of historically determined forces. Those of you who've had any study at all in some even minor aspects of sociology, anthropology, history, will know that all societies have a proclivity to go from smaller social aggregates to larger social aggregates, from the family to the clan, to the tribe, to the nation, to the continent. This is an evolutionary trend, and we said it is universal to be found in all societies. We can see this best if we were to look to Europe. Europe today speaks of a European continental unity. And Europe, of course, has waged more fratricidal wars than all the continents put together. But in spite of having waged all these fratricidal wars, Europe today is speaking of European continental unity. Certainly, I'm sure you can just see the growth of all societies follows this trend to go from smaller social aggregates to larger social aggregates. Africa, equal to every other people in every aspect, was also following this evolutionary path, going from smaller social aggregates to larger social aggregates, from the family to the clan, to the tribe, to the nation, to the continent. This evolutionary process was brutally arrested, brutally stopped by slavery and colonialism. That is to say, Africa on her own, left without this brutal interruption of slavery and colonialism, would have already arrived at continental unity. This slavery, of course, which came to brutally interrupt Africa's evolutionary process towards continental unity, took 300 million Africans out of Africa, the young and the strong. If we were to give America a population of, let's say, 300 million, I imagine somewhere between 280 and 300, let's say 300 million. If we were to take 50 million of the young and the strong out of America, we would reduce our productive forces to a miserably low stage. If you take 300 million of the young and the strong out of Africa, you destroy completely our productive forces. Therefore, it's to be understood that this slavery, which took Africa's most important element, a human element, outside of Africa, certainly stopped the evolutionary process. But the imperialist powers themselves were not just content with slavery. After having emptied Africa of a most vital element, a human element, they sat down in Berlin at a conference in 1864 and divided Africa. The French took a part, the Spanish took a part, the Portuguese took another part, the Italians took a part. Everybody took a part, except Africa, of course. These imperialist powers were certain that after having wasted Africa and the human element and divided Africa, that somehow this urge for continental unity, this evolutionary process which others have to go from smaller social aggregates to larger social aggregates, that is to say, to African continental unity, would completely be stopped. I think that human society has learned a lot about this. You can destroy churches, but you cannot destroy the desire for the people to believe in God. So, by doing all of these things, these imperialist powers thought they could stop this desire. But no, on the contrary, the desire for continental unity among Africans has grown stronger. Africa must be unified. And since an evolutionary process which would lead to this unified continent has been interrupted, the only way she can arrive at continental unity is through revolution. And therefore, we must understand precisely. Africa's choice for revolution is a historically determined choice. That is to say, had Africa been left alone, she would arrive at continental unity without any problems at all. But since this has been interrupted, and she still wants to arrive at continental unity, since the evolutionary process has been destroyed, the only process allowed for Africa to arrive at continental unity is through revolution. Of course, you know all revolution does is to speed up the evolutionary process of the march of human history. Of course, it was capitalism that came to destroy Africa's evolutionary process towards continental unity. And so since capitalism came to commit slavery, came to give us colonialism, we cannot unify Africa with capitalism. We can only unify Africa with the diametrical opposition of capitalism, which is socialism. So I think that in a few statements, as best as possible, available to our understanding of the problem, which we've been struggling with for decades, we've come to show you precisely that this need for Pan-African unity, this revolutionary need, this socialist component, is based upon historically determined facts outside of the African continent, i.e. slavery and colonialism, the dividing of Africa. Now I want to pause a little, talk to you a little about socialism. Now, of course, I know that you don't know anything about socialism. I know this. I know this because I know the capitalist system, and you live in the capitalist system. America is a capitalist system. In a capitalist system, not only do they make people ignorant, they make them arrogant in their ignorance. That is, not only do they not know, but they do not want to. And they're very arrogant about it. I remember once talking to a college student about Africa, he being an African, said, "What study about Africa will go do for me? I don't need to study Africa." Can you hear students saying that? All students must say, I want to study everything there is to study, because the more I know, the better human being I am, the better able I am to serve humanity. This is where we say, in America, they make them stupid and then arrogant about this. I want to learn about Africa, what's that going to do for me? All right. Stupid and then they're arrogant and they're stupidity. So most people don't know anything about socialism in America. And everything they know, they don't want to know. About a couple of last year, I was in an Arab country there and discussing revolutions, and that's my job. And some Arabs there were very confused. They couldn't understand America. You know, for them, there should be revolution in America. America's technologically developed, they have so much information, all that. I don't know, you know, America. I said, America, I think that people become stupid and they love their stupidity. And they couldn't understand it, you know, because they thought America should be so intelligent. I said, no, they love it. I said, look, we live in what they call the developing world. So our political regimes are not stable. Today, a revolutionary group may take power, tomorrow a reactionary group. When a reactionary group takes power, they burn all revolutionary books. When revolutionary groups take power, they ban all reactionary books. I said, in America, they don't have to ban anything. They leave them in the library. Nobody reads them at all. Matter of fact, teachers have a hard time trying to get their students reading textbooks. Did the teacher read it? Is it a sign reading? Unless we don't learn, you might learn something. So we understand the problem here. There are only two economic systems in the world, just two, capitalism or socialism. Of course, socialism has a discussion leading to communism. But that discussion, the discussion of socialism leading to communism, is not an economic discussion, it is a philosophical discussion. Communism is made up of three parts: dialectical materialism, historical materialism, and philosophical materialism. Philosophical materialism in the hands of Engels and Marx and Lenin, because of their European culture, is atheistic. That is to say, in order to be a communist, you must be an atheist. When we say atheism, we don't mean someone who doesn't believe in God. we mean someone who affirms the non-existence of God. Clearly here, this problem of denying God will create a lot of problems for people outside of European culture. Certainly in Africa, it creates a lot of problems. To tell people that before they arrive at a just society, they must give up God is incomprehensible. It seems to me that they think that the only way you can have a just society is with God. So the problem going to socialism and communism is not an economic problem, it is an ideological problem. And many people who are not atheists cannot accept communism. Therefore, that's why they have a lot of trouble in the Arab world, because there, the religion of Islam was not just a religious force, but also a civilizing force. So the Arabs hold on very strongly to their religion. So you come and tell them that to be a just person, you must give up God, is a little bit incomprehensible for them. So we will deal just with capitalism and socialism. Of course, even for those who call themselves communists, they see socialism as the first step. Now, I'm not an atheist. I want to make that quite clear. To deny the existence of God is awful powerful for me, even though my religious beliefs are not as precise as they should be, maybe. But when you see the perfect union of the stars, the way the earth has been built, this perfect rotation, it's kind of hard to say that all this came about by accident, you know. But some people do make that statement. All right, so we'll deal then with just capitalism and socialism. Both of them are economic systems, and we said there can only be two economic systems in the world. And there can only be two economic systems in the world because each economic system must answer one fundamental question. Who will own and control the wealth of the country? Who will own and control the means of production? The question can only be answered two ways. Either a few will own or everybody will own. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. In a capitalist system, a few people own everything, and people who own nothing justify them having the right to own everything. The capitalist system doesn't just strip off your labor, it distorts your thinking. It makes you think logically and morally. I remember once meeting a man who was saying, "Why don't you also about socialism?" I said, "Yeah, I'm against capitalism, I'm socialism." He said, "Well, I'm not against capitalism, I'm for it." You know, he went over all the speeches, freest country in the world, most democratic, you know the line they give you, all lies. And I said to him, "My brother, where are you working?" I said, "I ain't working, I'm unemployed." He's unemployed and defending capitalism. He's got labor to sell. Nothing to bargain with. You know, so it's really a confusing situation. That the people who have nothing at all to gain in capitalism are the ones who defend it the most. It's just like America. Africans defend America stronger than any other ethnic group in America, and they're more brutalized in America than any other group. Capitalism must be struggled with seriously on every level, without pity and without mercy, because it dupes the people without pity and without mercy. The capitalist system is a backward system. One of the cornerstones of capitalism is private property. I want to spend a little time with this aspect of it because as students it affects you greatly. Since private property is a cornerstone of capitalism, capitalism thinks everything is a private property and therefore everything can be a commodity. Of course, we know that human beings cannot be sold, but capitalism will sell my mother on an auction block. Yes, it will. Yes, it will. Therefore, we know that things should not be private property, but capitalism will use them as commodities. One of these things that affects you as students is that known as knowledge. After all, your purpose for coming to the university is to acquire knowledge. That is your purpose, especially whether it's technical knowledge or techniques or whatever, it's to acquire knowledge. Of course, the capitalist system can have you thinking so backwardly that you might think that this knowledge which you acquire becomes your private property. And that as such you have a right to bargain with other markets, you know, to the highest bidder. Knowledge has but one fundamental purpose. Its purpose is to alleviate the sufferings of humanity. Knowledge has but one fundamental purpose. Its purpose is to alleviate the sufferings of humanity. Since it's given to us by generations of people, it can never belong to any one of us. Once we acquire knowledge, we're only guardians of that knowledge. Depending upon how we use that knowledge in the society will depend upon how that knowledge grows. If we keep it to ourselves as a commodity, we've now come to, in fact, go against all the values of knowledge. Knowledge cannot be private property. Therefore, those of you who enter the university with the only motivating force of the capitalist system, profit by any means necessary. And those of you who come to the university with the motivating force to acquire knowledge just to advance yourself economically, have already made a great, great error in life. You will completely miss the essence of life. You're completely caught up in the capitalist system where you even think that your schoolwork, the knowledge which you acquire from generations, should be your private property to be used to advance yourself. For African students, and we want to tell you now, truth is universal, so when we speak about African students, we're only using a particular aspect of humanity to speak about the universal truth. That truth is for everybody. For those African students, it's even worse, because they know that they get these seats from the blood of their people. They know it. They know anything they get in America, they get through bloodshed. No one sitting in this audience can show me one advance that any African, even individually, has made in this country without shedding blood. To sit in a filthy 5 and 10 cent store where we want to sit, we've got to shed blood. To ride on a bus and sit where we want to sit, even though we pay the same amount of money as everybody else, we've got to shed blood. To live in any neighborhood we want to live in, even though we have the economic ability to live there, we have to shed blood. To get the vote in a democratic country, which is given to everyone, we have to shed blood. To get our children into universities where we pay taxes, we have to shed blood. No African, no non-African, anywhere in the world can show me what advancements that Africans have made in America without shedding blood. Therefore, every African who occupies any position in America, even a basketball player, must know this position is the result of the blood of my people and must be used for the benefit of my people. Failure to do this is betrayal to humanity and betrayal to the blood of the masses of your people. Your education belongs to your people, and you must understand that precisely. Capitalism will do everything to distort your mind. One of the backward aspects of capitalism is this nonsense about the individual. Stupid nonsense. It even makes it appear as if the individual sometimes, under some conditions, have the right to put their interests above the interests of the masses of the people. As revolutionaries, we tell you the truth. At all times, under all conditions, the interests of the masses of the people must reign supreme over any individual interest. Capitalism, we say, distorts the thinking, and it does. That's its job. Its job is to distort the thinking completely, make the people think logically, immorally. As a matter of fact, if you look at capitalism and look at this individual nonsense, it reduces the people to a level lower than animals. Because human beings are animals, but they are superior to animals. This was always became to mind. While they're similar to animals, they're also dissimilar to animals. And it's a dissimilarity that will put the real ground between them and the animals. For example, animals have instincts, so do human beings. But any human being who acts just on instinct and not on reason will act just like an animal. Therefore, human beings must not act on instinct, but must have all of their instincts governed at all times under all conditions by reason. Because human beings have the ability to think. Just because we say we have the ability to think doesn't mean that all of us think. And sometimes the capitalist system will have us think we're thinking when we're not thinking at all. As a matter of fact, capitalism makes them respond to stimuli, and the act of responding they think they're thinking. It's a vicious system. As a matter of fact, worse than that, it will even begin to confuse you and let you think that you can think about something you know absolutely nothing about. As a matter of fact, I remember as a young man in high school when giving us a philosophy, they started to give us the Latin term cogito ergo sum. I am, therefore I think. And this sounds really logical, but I know all of you know this isn't true, because all of you I know many who are and do not think. I know many. And not only this, the capitalist system lets you think that you can think about something you know nothing about. Thought is nothing other than the reflection of action for the gratification of future action. Without action, there can be no thought. I see them all the time. They sit on the basketball benches, watching the basketball player. Oh, you should have done this, you should have done that. Yeah, he's sitting there. Unless you play basketball, you can't even think about basketball. Unless you swim, you cannot think about swimming. If you don't take biology, you cannot think about biology. Of course, you can think about biology. But if you haven't taken physics, you can never think about the atom. You can think about it, but unless you've taken physics, you cannot think about the atom. You can only think about something when you're involved in it. This is especially important for African students, because capitalism will let them think that they can think about their people's advancement in the liberation struggle, and they're not involved in the liberation struggles of their people. So we want to make it clear to all the African students here, if you are not involved in your people's struggle to advance them, do not think that you can think about the advancement of your people. The only way you can really think about the advancement of your people is when you're involved in a concrete struggle on a daily basis to advance your people. Otherwise, you just think you're thinking and you're wasting time. You say, you know what problems we have with this capitalist system? And we haven't even got the socialism. I tell you so much, we have to fight it every minute of the day. The indigenous people of this country says, capitalism doesn't lie some of the time, it lies all of the time. When it tells the truth, it's a result of a double lie, that this is the truth. So, we will not belabor the point of the capitalist system too much. We just highlighted some points which affect you, certainly students, this concept of private property, and you're not getting carried away thinking private knowledge is your private property, or even your wife or something. And we've also shown the aspects of individualism. Now, we want to show really how backward this individualism thing is now. And of course, we can look at, we can look at biological experiences, and what I like all the time is really a biological aspect of this nonsense of the individual human beings. Now, other animals of the lower kingdom, any of their species isolated by themselves can make it by themselves, but no human being isolated from the human species can make it by itself. That should alone squash this nonsense about the individual. Certainly, if you take a kitten the minute it's born, before it opens its eyes, you take a puppy the minute it's born, before it opens its eyes, you take a baby the minute it's born, before it's opened its eyes, and you throw them in the woods, there's no question. The kitten will grow to the fullest cat potential. The puppy will grow to the fullest dog potential, but it's question whether or not the human being will live. That baby might scratch itself to death. If it doesn't, it is questioned whether or not it will be able to even move around. But one thing is sure, even if the baby lives, it will be incapable of functioning in any society, therefore making any contribution to any society, because human beings learn through imitation. So this individual nonsense means absolutely nothing. Of course, we can take it one step further. Take the same kitten, the same puppy, the same baby, throw them before their eyes are open to grow up with monkeys. The puppy, which grows up with the monkey, will grow up to be a dog, wag its tail, love bones. The kitten, growing up to be a cat, will be a full cat. It will love milk. The first time it sees a mouse, it will run with it, play with it, eat it. It will meow. But the human being will talk like a monkey, walk like a monkey, eat monkey food, and try to make a contribution to monkey culture. Of course. Human beings learn by imitation. Therefore, this individual nonsense means absolutely nothing. If you were outside of the society, any individual outside of any society, any individual isolated from the human species is more stupid than any other species. As a matter of fact, a baby ant will never crawl into fire. A kitten will never go into fire. A bird will never go into fire. A puppy will never go into fire. But a baby will walk right into fire smiling all the way, unless another human being protects them and shows them the way. You must smash this nonsense about the individualism. It is the people and the people who give us everything. Since they give us everything, everything we get must be given back to the people. This concept then must be clearly understood. This is based, of course, on socialism. Socialism has as its motivating force service to humanity. Now, of course, I understand capitalism. Tomorrow, a lady will tell you, professors, I want you to hear a talk by Kwame Ture. And he said that socialism is the best system. And the professor will say, oh yes, but socialism is utopia. You think the teachers talk about me. Oh, the teachers talk about you. One of the teachers making a statement saying that there's something that man and woman cannot achieve. I want to tell you, as students, the only attitude you can take in life is there's nothing that man and woman cannot achieve. You may limit yourself, but you certainly can never limit the creativities of the people. Therefore, in no time, under any condition, must you say that the human being cannot do such and such. No, that's nonsense. I was a young man growing up in Trinidad in the Caribbean. There we had no lights as a young man, and when the moon came out, being close to the equator, it came out very full and bright. As a young man, I enjoyed when the moon came out. We could run and play games at night, which was bright light of the moon. I would run to my grandmother and say, Granny, Granny, I want to go to the moon. And she said, hush up, child. That's God's state. You can't go there. But today we go to the moon. Today we go to the moon. Therefore, you must never say that there's something that man and woman cannot do. And this flight to the moon started a long time ago. Greek philosophy tells us about a man. What was his name? Is Daedalus, I think? Who was Greek philosophy here? A mythology. Daedalus, the one who put the wings on and tried to fly across, and he was with his son. I forgot his son's name. Or was his son Daedalus? Oh, at least you do know it. Thank you. I was worried about you. Did they start teaching you that? And you know, of course, it went too close to the sun, and wax melted and fell. But since then, man and woman has been trying to go to the moon. So there's nothing that man and woman cannot do. And to build a just society, There's nothing man and woman will not do. Therefore, you must not let your teacher say that. But your teacher says this because she knows that you've been confused already. Capitalism lets you think that life is one-sided. So I remember once when having a discussion with German, she said, Mr. Ture, what do you really want? I said, power. He said, how about money? I said, give me power. He said, how about faith? I said, just power. He said, don't you know power corrupts? And absolute power absolutely corrupts? I said, that's in your thinking. That's your one-sided thinking. Because they tell you that man by nature is basically greedy. Of course he is. But woman by nature is also basically altruistic. You never have a one-sided aspect of any life. There's always two sides. I used to laugh at those in the early days of the civil rights movement. We used to talk about, you can't have no hatred. I said, I hate injustice, Jack. And once this old preacher came to see me, he said, you hatred? I said, I've got some hatred in me, Reverend. I said, I hate injustice with a passion. He said, well, you're not supposed to hate anything. I said, well, do you love Satan? Do you love Satan? If you're a Christian, your hatred is saying, Satan, that better be total. I mean, it better be total. If you like anything about Satan, he'll catch you. Yes, if you like the way he dresses, you like my dress. I just had one day for you to try it on. So I understand that you don't have love, you must have hatred. I have full hatred of injustice, and my hatred of injustice is righteous. It's righteous hatred. So I'm not confused by this. Life is a dialectical aspect at all times. There are opposites. There's never just one side or the other. There's always two sides. If a man is greedy, he must have the ability to be altruistic. If a man is competitive, woman must have the ability to be cooperative. Everywhere you look, you will find it. But in capitalist society, they hide the positive aspects of humanity. They show only the evil aspects, therefore justifying the evil systems, I guess, with a statement like neediness. This is the best of all possible worlds because man is basically evil, so capitalism is all you can get. Nonsense. Martin Luther King never let power corrupt him. Never. He was a preacher. And in my community, preachers always had Cadillacs. King never drove a Cadillac. King was a preacher. And in my community, preachers loved money. King had no love for money. He loved the poor, the downtrodden. He gave his life to liberate them. Martin Luther King never saw power. So telling me that power corrupts just means that your backward capitalist system tells you that man by nature is corrupted, therefore everything is corrupted. But I know that man is both corrupted and altruistic. And depending upon the values that are acquired by the human being, she can be just as altruistic as he can be greedy. Therefore, I'm not confused here at all by capitalism. I tell you, you have to fight it every step of the way. All right. When we grew up from socialism, but one thing I must tell you about it. Last year I was talking about socialism. A man said, you still talking about it? I said, yes. He said, why? I said, well, I'm intelligent, of course, like you think. He said, did you hear about it? It's dead. And he explained to me about Gorbachev and these people in East who betrayed. I said, oh, that's betrayal. That's not kind of socialism. I said, capitalism has confused you. He said, there you go. All the profits in the world use capitalism. I said, of course they are. I'm anti-capitalist and I know the system. He said, what do you mean? I said, it's confusing your thinking. He said, how is that? I said, it's that you can judge socialism by socialists. He said, well, how do you judge it? I said, you judge no system by its adherents. You judge it by its principles. He said, now you give me double talk. You're telling me I shouldn't judge socialism by socialists? I said, that's exactly what I'm telling you. He said, how should you judge it? I told you by its principles. He said, no, I don't understand that. I asked him a question. Do you judge Christianity by Christians? Which of you do? No human being can judge Christianity by Christians, not even by the Pope. When we judge Christianity, we judge it by its principles. All these principles, the thought, word, deed, and living action of Jesus Christ, peace be upon his name. Well, we can judge Christianity by Christians. Why? We would have buried it a long time ago, never to show its face again on the face of the earth. Because those who call themselves Christians and have killed in the name of why, it's terrible. It's terrible. So you know that Zionists killed Palestinians with God on their side? And the Europeans wiped out the Indians with God on their side. So we don't judge the world by Christians. We judge Christianity by its principles. Therefore, you don't judge socialism by socialism. You judge it by its principles. And anyone looking at the principles of socialism must know it's the just economic system. Just two manifestations that will leave capitalism and socialism. We're saying in a capitalist system, a few people own and control the wealth of the country, therefore the country of the rich. A man was telling me the other day about the democratic nation of America. I want to know how can we call the country the richest country in the world with 6 million homeless democratic? I can understand that democracy at all. You mean you got a country that says it's democratic, you got the richest country in the world, you got 6 million people are homeless, and this is part of the system, and you accept it? And more getting homeless, and you don't seem to worry about it? Well, I don't like this democracy at all. Capitalism has no democracy at all. It's democracy for the rich. Absolutely for the rich. Do you know that if you are poor, and like I am, and have serious problem with health, that you could die if you don't have money to take care of your health care? You know that. Cuba is a poor country, very poor country, very poor country. But everybody in Cuba who is ill is taken care of. Not only that, from the time you're born, a doctor documents your health development until death in Cuba. And it costs the Cuban citizen absolutely nothing. Fidel Castro, a great man, understands that the most important thing for him is the health of his citizens, not the wealth of the nation. In America, you have to pay to go to school. Pay to go to school. No wonder you all get confused. You think since you pay for knowledge, somebody's supposed to pay to get it back from you. You must have capitalism confusion. In Cuba, every citizen goes to school scot-free to any level they want, free of charge, completely free of charge. Just simply because in Cuba, the people ought to control the wealth of the country. And since the people ought to control the wealth of the country, it's used for the people. In America, a few people ought to control it, therefore the wealth is used for those few people, not for everybody. It's as simple as that. Anyway, I'm a socialist, and I need to tell you that socialism is coming to America. I need to tell you that as a fighter in the 60s, I want to tell you that America is more ripe for revolution today than it was in the 1960s. More ripe. And one of these aspects, political aspects that you can see, and I can show you to see how right America is. In the 1960s, it was the progressive and left-wing forces in this country calling for change. The right-wing forces supported the government. They wanted no change at all. They wanted to maintain the status quo. But today, the right-wing forces are fighting against the government. It doesn't mean that they're fighting for the same things the progressive forces are fighting for. But since the right wing is fighting for change, and the progressive forces must have change, the possibility of change becomes easier. Perhaps the most important aspect of why we know that America is more ripe for revolution today is the human aspect, because the revolution is people that make revolution, not things. Conditions can quicken their consciousness, but it's the people that make revolution, not the conditions. And the people in America today are far more conscious than they were in the 1960s in every aspect. In every aspect. The American capitalist system and its media, which lies all the time, would want to have you believe that the American people are less politically conscious today than they were in the 60s. Nothing is further from the truth. In every aspect, they are more politically aware. As a matter of fact, in simple things such as abortion, the people in America are politically polarized over the question of abortion. On the question of busing, they are politically polarized. The question of women's rights and women's liberation have taken great leaps and bounds since the 1960s. No woman today will accept what women accepted in the 1960s. That's clear. No young woman in university will accept what a counterpart accepted in the 60s while struggling. That's clear. The ecology movement has broadened and deepened everywhere. Therefore, people look seriously in American life, not through the eyes of the capitalist media, which lies all the time. You will see that people in America are certainly more conscious today than they were in the 1960s. And when you have rising conditions, rising consciousness, and worsening conditions, you must have an explosion. That's crystal clear. That's crystal clear. Therefore, America is more ripe for revolution than it was in the 60s. We're very happy about this because this is our life's work, to make revolution. And especially in America, because people think America is such a specialized country. Of course, the struggle begins from the first time there's oppression. Most people in America think that somehow the struggle of Africans began in the 1960s. We will stop this concept quickly. From the first time the first African slave was snatched, the struggle began. And if one would look properly at African history, one would see there were struggles on Africa against slave catchers and slave raiders. If one would look on the ships, one would see revolts everywhere on the ships. If one would look throughout wherever slavery was, you would see rebellions. We can truthfully say that wherever slavery led, rebellions faithfully followed. Everywhere there was slavery, there were rebellions. Therefore, we can truthfully say that the Africans fought in Africa on the seas and everywhere that slavery took them against slavery. And it's this constant, uninterrupted struggle, and this alone that advances their struggle. Capitalism will try to confuse you. It will try to let you think that young people just advance capacity. That at one time they couldn't get in here and then they just got in here. At one time they couldn't get in schools like Dekab and now they just come. No. Frederick Douglass said it best. Where there is no struggle, there is no progress. This point must be properly imposed upon your mind that without struggle there is no progress. Certainly you know this as students. If you go to biology class and you do not struggle with the concepts of biology, you will not acquire knowledge of biology, not by osmosis. The only way you acquire this knowledge of biology is by struggle with the concepts, coming to master it. And we all know the student who struggles with the most difficult concepts and come to master these concepts will be the most advanced student in the class. Therefore, it's clear it is only through struggle and struggle alone that we advance. Therefore, those of you who do not like struggle, do not like progress. Now, I want to tell you one other thing, because the American capitalist system is such a backward system that makes you think that all you have to do is work for a little while, and then after you work, you just sit back and enjoy life and consume more than you produce. What stupidity. It makes you sit like an animal. Animals consume and don't produce. Human beings consume and produce. And a conscious human being knows that they must produce more than they consume to leave more for those who come after them. That's clear. But if you're not careful, you will think that you will go to college for 4 years, and after you get a nice job, you won't do nothing, just sit back, have a nice car, a nice house, and do nothing, just consume. Stupidity. You must think always of producing. And if you think always of producing, you think of looking for difficult problems. I'm a revolutionary. I never look for easy problems. Any slave who looks for the easy way out will never get out. The slave who looks for the most difficult way will not only get out, but will never return to slavery. As a revolutionary, I look only for difficult problems, and the most difficult problems. The more difficult the problem is, the easier you solve it, the more confidence you have in your ability to solve all problems. Therefore, we want to make it clear to you that struggle is eternal. You must not, as students, think that you only have to struggle for your people when you're a student, and then when you get married, you stop struggling. You must understand, like Harriet Tubman, that you take struggle to the grave. This is the only way to truly understand life. So the civil rights movement in the 1960s, which Malcolm X correctly called the human rights struggle, was a struggle in which Africans fought against overt segregation and against overt political repression, especially in the area of voting. This struggle was carried on using many different tactics. In the beginning, the foremost tactic was one of nonviolence. Now you hear me, I use it as a tactic. Martin Luther King is a great man. Nobody can take that away from him. Martin Luther King is the best example of a living Christian. One who comes to think about feeding the poor. One who comes to think about freeing the slaves from oppression. But Martin Luther King, like all men, like all women who do anything, makes errors. And certainly it's our responsibility, those of us who are involved in the same struggle that he's involved in, the same level of intensity he's involved in, must come to correct those errors. One of the errors that Martin Luther King made in relationship to social reality, I must tell you something about social reality, or social truth. There is a thing such as truth, and there is a thing such as social truth. For example, all right, I'll give you the truth. Truth is that the most impressive way of affecting and impressing an idea on the minds of our people today is through audio-visual means. If you hear something on the radio, it might escape you. If you see a silent movie, it might escape you. Once you put both of them together, it has a powerful effect upon the mind. That's the truth. Now, social truth is that most people in America, everything they see on television or in the movies, they think is true. Of course, there's a contradiction here, but it is a social truth and social reality. They do believe that what they see on television is true. You know, most people believe that the movie they saw by Spike Lee about Malcolm X is true. They just believe it's true, you know, so that's a social reality. So we have to deal with social reality while we deal with truth. And of course, this why it's a social reality represents a social truth. You know, for example, in the 1940s, many white people thought that they could just lynch an African when they wanted to because they were inferior. Whether Africans knew this wasn't the truth or not, there was a social truth here. They could come and lynch you. So you have to always take care of social truth and social reality. The social reality was that the Africans in this country have never accepted nonviolence as a philosophy. This is where King separated himself from his people. And this understanding must be properly understood, especially by those of you who talk about the civil rights movement. Martin Luther King was out of step with his people on the question of violence as a philosophy. But now King was an honest man. This is why we love him so. He was so honest, so incorruptible. That's why the masses really loved him. King took nonviolence as a philosophy, as a principle. Now, I must tell you something about principles, because American capitalism will confuse you here too. I remember as a college student at Howard University, college student, I think it was my sophomore year, reading a political education book, and this is what it said. In America, politics is the art of compromise. I laughed. No wonder it's like that. And they went on to explain, you have a give and take, and somebody give and somebody take, and then you have one side and another side, there's this round and this round, and there must always be gray area and middle ground. I laughed again. I'm a revolutionary. My life is guided by principles. Where principles are concerned, there is no middle ground. As a matter of fact, the press always say, oh, Mr. Kwame, Ture, he's too harsh. For him, there's no white, there's no black, there's no gray, there's just white and black. That's correct. There's no in between. That's correct. There's no middle ground. Everything is on one side and the other. That's absolutely correct. I'm a revolutionary. I found the principles, but you know this. You know where principles are concerned, there is no middle ground. Either you lie or you tell the truth. Where's the middle ground? I told a white lie. You lied. Either on the test you cheat or you don't cheat. There is no middle ground. Where principles are concerned, there is no middle ground. If your people are oppressed, either you're fighting to help liberate your people, or by your very act of inaction, you are against your people. There is no middle ground. Where principles are concerned. Therefore, since Dr. Martin Luther King made nonviolence a principle, he knew that it could not be compromised. Because once you compromise a principle, you abandon it. If you come into Dekab as a freshman and you say as your principle you will never cheat, once you compromise, you've cheated. You've given up your principle. Therefore, where principles are concerned, they cannot be compromised. An honest man, an honest woman must die standing up for their principles rather than compromise them. This is crystal clear. You see it everywhere. Even in the fight for Christianity, the fight for any principles to make them establish themselves. Therefore, where principles are concerned, there is no middle ground. Dr. King was an intelligent human being. He knew this. Therefore, once he took nonviolence as a principle, he could never compromise it. And he was forced to say the only, underline the word only, the only way we can achieve our liberation is through nonviolence. We say this is an error. And Dr. King must have known this error from social reality. If we would go back to the early history of the Montgomery Improvement Association, the movement which Dr. King was the leader of, we will see that in the early days there, his house was bombed by terrorist groups, racist terrorist groups, dynamited. And when Dr. King's house was dynamited, the African community in Montgomery was stealing mad. They wanted to pick up guns and go shoot some white people. And Dr. King came out, Dr. King was a great man. He could calm anybody. He calmed them down. He just speaks through it. I'm telling you. I've seen him do it so many times. Just calmed them down. Just made peace. And then told them, no, there's no need to do it. And of course, started preaching all his nonviolent principles. And then he said, let's go back into the house. And they asked him, do you have a gun in the house? He said, no, he's not violent. He's going to keep it going in the house. They told him, we're putting bodyguards on your front lawn and around your house. He said, no. They said, yes, yes. He said, no. They said, yes, yes. And they put the bodyguards around his house and he had to accept it. So if you would look at Dr. King's development, you will see from the very beginning Dr. King understood that he was isolated on this principle of nonviolence as a principle. He was isolated in his community, not just all, he was isolated. So Dr. King, of course, brought nonviolence into the struggle. Now, you must understand something about nonviolence. Again, unfortunately, most of our history is written by those who didn't participate in history. You know what the Chinese say? No observation, no right to speak. Chinese are great. The Chinese are great. No observation, no right to speak. And then again, those who write our history do not have a proper understanding of our history. So most of the people in the history books, you know what they give Dr. King as his greatest contribution to us as a people? Dr. King brought nonviolence into the movement. This is his greatest contribution. What nonsense. In the first place, Dr. King is an intelligent man. And certainly as an intelligent man bordering on brilliance and genius, it doesn't take anything for him to adopt nonviolence from India and bring it to America. Anybody can do that. Dr. King was a brilliant man, genius. Dr. King's greatest contribution to us as a people was not to give us nonviolence. His greatest contribution to us as a people was to teach us how to face the enemy without fear. This must be properly understood. I remember once after Black Power, when discussing with Dr. King about this question of guns, he said, well, Kwame, why do you all have to have guns? I said, well, really, Dr. King, I don't pick up guns just thanks to you. He said, to me. I said, of course. He said, how's that? I said, you taught me how to face the white man without guns. You taught me how to face him non-violently when he had guns. He had billy hoses. He had water hoses. He had clubs. He had cattle prods. He had everything. I had nothing with the righteousness you gave me. So if I could face him without a gun, you know, ain't gonna take nothing, Dr. King, to face him with a gun. So you must know the contributions, Dr. King's greatest contributions. He taught us how to face them without fear. I would see Dr. King come into a southern town. There, the people were completely afraid. As a matter of fact, a white man is walking on the sidewalk, and Africans walk the sidewalk. The African gets off the sidewalk. I've seen this in my life. I've seen towns where the white man will tell us, Mississippi, you got a curfew. We don't want no African out here after 7:30. And they find no Africans on the street after 7:30. I have seen this in my lifetime. I've lived this. And Dr. King would come to one of these little towns and say, we're going to turn this town upside down. Well, Dr. King, these white folk ain't like the other one. They didn't eat down here. He said, we're going to bring justice down here. No, Dr. King, you ain't going to bring nothing down here. You white folk don't like nothing from down here. He said, we're going to turn the town upside down. We're going to bring justice in here. Dr. King, we ain't got nothing. We can't do nothing. Dr. King looked at them. He looked at this guy and said, my God is a mighty God. He makes a way out of no way. Let's go, children. And he knows people get up. And those same people who a few weeks ago were bowing and scraping before white people, Dr. King will fill them with righteousness, and they will face the same sheriff, get beaten by him, not get afraid, come back again, and come back again, and come back again, until they stood up on their feet like men and women. Dr. King's greatest contribution to us as a people was he taught us how to face the enemy without fear. We must forever thank him for this. On this question of Black Power was raised as a square challenge to Dr. King's morality as the basis of arriving at our position. You know, Dr. King kept telling us, all you got to do is moral and you get where you're going. But it was clear that morality had nothing to do with the struggle, it's power. Power is in the hands of the just or the unjust. That's a question of power. That's all. I think I study all religions. I recommend it to everybody. I studied the Quran, I studied the Ture, I studied the Bible, I studied the works of Yeshua, I studied the work of the Samaritan. I studied the religion of the indigenous people of this country, commonly called the American Indians. Now theirs is moral. So it means I have to spend a lot of time with them, their elders, listening to them. I learned a lot from them. And I am certain that the indigenous people of this country, the American Indians, are just people. I'm certain of this. But even though they were just people, they were wiped out by injustice because they didn't have power. So I was tired of pointing this out to Dr. King, who still couldn't see. So Dr. King, power is what we need. And Black Power was sent out precisely for this. We need power. We're powerless. Not only were we powerless in the 1960s, we're still powerless today. That's why the struggle continues. I mean, the mockery that they make of us just increases your hatred against the capitalist system. In the 1960s, we had very few mayors in this country. Do you know today the Africans in this country have over 320 mayors? Did you know this? It's your history, you must know it. And these mayors were bought for with the blood of the people. And do you know most of these mayors belong to the Democratic Party? And do you know we have no power in the Democratic Party at all? I mean, what they do to us is really disgusting. We had no mayors in the 60s, and those vote is the answer. Give the vote, get your mayor, vote for your representatives. We got mayors, and the conditions are worse today than they were before the mayors. I'm telling you, the illusions which they strip against our eyes must drive us to revolution. There is no other solution. If you truly care about your people and want to see their suffering stop, you know that they're suffering because they lack power. That's all. No other reason. And until we get power, we will not be respected, and exploitation will not cease. Power comes only from the organized masses. Power comes only from the organized masses. This is the only legitimate power that we have. So black power was goes on. Number one, of course, black power was also, of course, the question properly to Dr. King's nonviolent principle. You know, Dr. King, we're with you, but we taking guns with us. You know, and if they try to stop us, we're going to shoot at them. Now, the difference between Dr. King and I on this line, of course, press people make it appear to get such big differences. It was only this question, and it's clear. Dr. King would stop only at nonviolent means. If he could get his liberation by nonviolent means, he'd keep trying. The difference between him and I is that once nonviolence is a tactic for out, I picked up a gun. I'm gonna chuck hand grenades because I'm gonna be free by any means necessary. This is the only difference between Dr. King and I. You must not get confused here. He would use only nonviolent means. Me, I'm gonna use any means to get free. Because freedom for me is the most sacred thing there is on the face of the earth. And all men and women are oppressed by other men and women, not by gods. So the question was to be brought out clearly in black power that we have the right to self-defense. And not only do we have the right to self-defense, since nobody's asking the white terrorist groups to lay down their arms, why do they ask us to lay down our arms? It's just the same thing from the 1787 Hague-Stillman Compromise. They took away the guns from the Africans and left the Ku Klux Klan with the guns. Never will I tell any African in America not to have a gun. Even if they shoot other Africans, keep the guns until you learn to shoot. Just a question of direction, that's all. All right, we started with Pan-Africanism and we're coming to the final conclusion, the basic conclusion, and we come back to Pan-Africanism. This question of Pan-Africanism, we said in the beginning, was just a process, an evolutionary process, which all people seek to go from smaller social aggregates to larger social aggregates. We showed the example of Africa, where she, of course, was a redhead. Now, this problem of Africa is serious in America, especially for African students, Do you know that as a student in America going through university, the only things I ever found out about Africa written in the book were negative? So negative was it that even as an elementary school student, they had written in the book that it's true slavery was horrible, it could have been one of the worst holocausts, but Africans ought to be happy because though slavery was terrible, the conditions in Africa were worse. Could you imagine that? Well, the whole book is about big emphasis is nothing but lies, that's what we said. And they actually had me believing that you should be happy to be a slave because things were so rough in Africa. Of course, their job is to cut us off completely from Africa. The job of an enemy is to make you take the enemy's history and think it's yours. The job of the enemy is to make you take the enemy's culture and make you think it's yours. Once you have the enemy's history and the enemy culture, the enemy doesn't have to worry about you. You will think and act just like the enemy. While certainly we have divergent backgrounds, we must understand these divergent backgrounds if in fact we want to reach common ground. We must come to it honestly. Africans didn't come to this country like others. Others volunteered to come, expecting a better way of life. No African expected any better way of life once he stepped into a slave ship off the coast of Africa. That was hell. And he took a trip to hell to get to America, and all these years later, they still find themselves in hell in America. These are clear facts. And must be properly understood. Therefore, those who came to America for other reasons, they have fulfilled these reasons. But of course, the only way to have the Africans fulfill these reasons is to confuse them and let them think that they came to America on the Mayflower. Of course, any African who thinks they came to America on the Mayflower will be confused and think he's having a good time. But Africans who know they came on a slave ship and see the conditions of their people will know precisely that they have a struggle on their hands. And this struggle for common ground can only come about when people appreciate Africa and her struggles to civilize America. Hear me well. As a people, we don't know what we do, and we sometimes belittle our own history, and belittle it seriously, and sometimes even once you fight over victories. A man the other day told me, "You in Cuba?" I said, "Yeah, I was in Cuba in January." He said, "When are you going?" I said, "I got to go to Cuba next month in April." He said, "You going to Cuba?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Did you hear what Clinton said?" I said, "Listen, don't upset me. I know my victories. Once my people broke out of the plantation, I will never again ask permission of any white man to go where I want to go." People want that at the plantation. A plantation, you could move from a plantation unless a white man lets you. Some slaves lived their entire lives on one plantation and never moved off of it. Give me a break. After all the blood we shed in slavery, you think I'm going to come back today and ask the white man permission to leave a plantation? You must be joking. My people want that victory. And when my people want victories, I stand on the shoulders of my people's victories. Always want to. Back the other day, he told me, "You're against capitalism." I said, "Yeah." He said, "You'll be happy to America. I said, happy for America? Yeah. Oh, in America, can you say what you want to say? I said, when my people first came here, our tongues were cut off if we spoke African languages. It's the struggles of my people that put me in a position where I can speak the truth, and I will speak the truth based on the blood of my people suffering. Never America, it's my people suffering who advance me all the way. I know this. Any thanks I have to any advancement in America is not to America, it's to my people. Some Africans get confused and thank America. That's a confused African. I will always thank my people because I know my people and I know their constant struggle to advance life. They're the only ones I thank for any advancement in America. Of course, it's fact, it's fact. So when we had divergent backgrounds, let's look at that. Let me just take this aspect of divergent backgrounds a little bit. No African student at Dekab of African extract can sit next to a student of German extract and be in the same school and think themselves equal. While you're in the university, you'll hear more of the great contributions Germany made to the world. You'll hear nothing of Africa. Absolutely nothing. You cannot sit next to a student of Russian extract and think that you're just equal to them. For the 4 years, you hear something about Russia. What contributions it made, you will never hear anything about Africa. Therefore, the African student has a responsibility. In order to get to common ground, we must have common ancestry, common history, and common respect for them. That is to say, before we get to common ground, the student of German extract must seriously respect the student of African extract. And the only way they can do this is when they know of the contributions which Africa has made to world humanity. Therefore, the task of bringing out these contributions lay on the shoulders of the African student. But it is their responsibility to make sure the entire university community is aware of these contributions so they will respect you. Your task is there, clearly. Of course, I know that any man or woman, African or non-African, who does not respect Africa is a stupid man and a stupid woman who knows nothing of world history. This is a fact because of Africa's great contributions to world humanity. If you know anything about world humanity, world history, world civilization, if you would just take a cursory glance at any aspect of it, you will see Africa making contributions to every aspect of it. I do not want to belabor the point. After all, our task here is not to speak of Africa, but while speaking of Pan-Africanism, we must know that unless you are proud to be an African, you will always be cuddled in inferiority complexes. Always. The capitalist system is very good at this. In the first place, it starts our history in America in slavery. Of course, if it doesn't go back to Africa, it starts you in slavery. Look at how vicious this system is. If you start your history in slavery, the best you can hope to be is a good slave. Well, maybe a second-class citizen, I guess it means the same thing. But any people starting their history must start their history in freedom because all people started their society free. None of them started oppressed. And if you want to start your society free, the only place you were free was in Africa. Therefore, African students who truly want to understand their history, have a real grasp of their history, must begin their history in Africa. We said when we look at Africa and see their great contributions, we would be more than proud to be Africans. We would take only one aspect of world civilization, world humanity, to which Africa made contributions, and that is the spiritual aspect of life, even in the manifestations of religion. The very first sacred book in the world is incorrectly entitled the Egyptian Book of the Dead. The correct title should be the Egyptian Book of Coming Forth. This book is written over 6,500 years ago. Africa gave this book to the world. If you will read the Egyptian Book of the Dead, you will find all of the reliable sources and stories and adventures that you find in the Quran, in the Bible, and the Ture. It was Africa that gave to the world the concept of monotheism, belief in one God. And if you would look at Africa at that time, when we were talking about monotheism in Africa, belief in one God, you will see to the east of Africa, in Persia, in Iran, they were worshiping the sun. Further along to the northeast of Africa, there staying east, you will find they were worshiping cows. To the north of Africa, in Palestine, etc., they were worshiping idols. And they would worship idols in Palestine until the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon his name, came in the 6th century to give them a monotheistic religion in the form of Islam. Africa's contributions to world religions are outstanding. Africa gave Judaism to the world. Africa gave Judaism to the world. The first Jews in the world were Africans. I do not say this based on the work of Dr. Ben or Dr. Henry Clark. I tell you this based on the work of Sigmund Freud. American Catholicism has a way of hiding emotions. But a man told me a long time ago, no one can hide the truth. If you search for it, you will find it. Sigmund Freud's last book is entitled Moses and Monotheism. It's his last book. They never talk about it, but it's in the library. You know, your job is to read. Your job is to read as African students. Thank you, there it is, a copy. You're on time. Excellent, brother, excellent. Excellent. Moses and Monotheism is an excellent book. If you would read this book, Sigmund Freud, through archaeological, through geographical, through historical, through even psychological proofs, shows you that the first Jews were Africans, and Judaism came from Africa. It had to come from Africa. It was only Africa that was speaking monotheism. Judaism, chronologically speaking, as the first universal religion, speaking of monotheism, had to get its breeding ground in Africa. It could get it nowhere else. Anywhere else, they would have killed it. It was only in Africa. That's the first Jews in the world of Africans. I know this is a conscious African. Therefore, I can never be anti-Judaic, nor the Zionist press will ever stop saying this. How can I be anti-Judaic? I'm a proud African, trying to show the contributions Africa made to the world. Africa gave Judaism to the world. How can I be against Judaism? Religions have one fundamental purpose. Their purpose is to impose moral obligation on man and woman. And in a world like today, we need this imposition. Therefore, I'm very grateful. I'm very content to Judaism in the world. When I see some Jews who are racist, I tell them, be cool, I gave you your religion. Of course. Judaism was given up. Judaism has nothing to do with Zionism. We must be careful here. Just like slavery has nothing to do with Christianity. But I remember hearing a woman actually tell me that her grandfather told her that her slave master was a Christian. I thought, my head. A slave master cannot be a Christian. Everyone knows that. As soon as a slave master becomes a Christian, the first thing he does is liberate his slaves. If he doesn't do that, he's not a Christian. That's clear. So some people can think that slave masters can be Christians. Some people think that segregationists can be Christians. Some people think all full of nonsense, but we know a Christian can only be one who upholds the principles of Christianity. That's only a true Christian. Some people think that Zionism and Judaism is one and the same. Zionism is a political philosophy. Judaism is a religion. They must not be brought together at all. According to Judaism, as a religion, theologically speaking, God promised to give the land to the Jews. I have no problem with this. I want to make it clear to all. I certainly wholeheartedly agree with this. God promised the land of Palestine, they call it Israel, to the Jews. But in order for the Jews to get the land, God must give it to them. They cannot play God and take the land that God promised them. When they do this, they violate the laws of God. Oh, my people in the South used to tell me, God don't come when you call him, he comes when you need him. So maybe they ought to wait a little bit longer. As a matter of fact, if you understand the theological aspect of Judaism, you would understand the statement I made is a correct statement. Once you are a Jew, you accept, because if you look at all religions, they have the same line, suffering before redemption. But when you're a Jew, you accept the suffering heaped upon you by the world, because your job is to redeem the world. And you redeem the world only by accepting the sufferings. Here they are, you Martin Luther King. Totally. So I understand properly the philosophy, and I respect it, as I have a great deal of respect for Martin Luther King. But you must, of course, accept it. Zionism is a political philosophy which comes to say that the land belongs to the Jews and they must take it like everybody else. Well, God didn't promise anybody else any land. And the Europeans took this land with God on their side, but we know they didn't take the land with God. They took it by gun force, by violence, by biological warfare of the worst order. Those Zionists who are now occupying Palestine and chase the Palestinians out, didn't chase the Palestinians out with God. God will never chase some of his own people out that he's created, his own children, with others. No. They were confused with a philosophy that you had said the land was theirs and they should take it by force, and they took it by force. But the land belongs to the Palestinian people. And we who support justice must support the Palestinian people. And they're going to get back every square inch of their land. And just loving people must support them. So we support the Palestine Liberation Organization unconditionally. We said this is a particular responsibility of us as we as Africans gain Jews of the world. We will move on to Christianity quickly. We will not spend much time, and we will belabor the point of little sense to most Africans and American Christians. But I told you in the very beginning that the American capitalist system makes the people stupid and make them wallow in their stupidity. Here's a clear example. Find on your campus there a brother or sister who's a sorority or fraternity who's a Christian. I'm willing to bet you that this brother who's in the fraternity and this sister who's in sorority and who are also Christians will respond exactly as I said they will respond to the question. Ask them, which is more important to you, the fraternity or Christianity? They must say Christianity. Now ask them the question. Ask them the history of their fraternity. Ask them the history of their sorority. They will give it to you with every crossing every T and dotting every I. Ask them the history of Christianity. They will not know anything about it at all. The job of American capitalism is to direct the energies of the people towards frivolity and away from the forces that affect their lives. I said this is a vicious system that must be fought at all times. They will say that Christianity is more important. They know nothing about it. I'm a conscious African. I'm a conscious African. I know Africa's contributions to Christianity. I must know it. That's why when white people talk to me about Christianity and don't talk about Africa, I know they're not Christians. Because any Christian must respect Africa. When Jesus Christ, peace be upon his name, was in trouble and being hunted by everybody, it was only Africa that granted him refuge. Only Africa. It was in Africa that he grew up. And since Africa had already accepted monotheism centuries before the birth of Christ, peace be upon his name, he was able to imbue this. He was able to take it in, just by osmosis, being in Africa which supported monotheism for centuries. He grew up here. It was his intellectual growing up in Africa. His physical and his spiritual growth was in Africa. It was here he was prepared for his later work in life. The first church in the world comes out of Africa. The first monastery in the world comes out of Africa. The very intellectual development of the church comes out of Alexandria, which is in Egypt, which still is in Africa. They're always trying to pull it out. Everywhere you go. Why, it's amazing to me, the contributions of these Africans who are Christians. You know why? Because they never read their Bible from cover to cover. Isn't that terrible? These Africans, even these students who call themselves Christians, can read. They never read their Bible from cover to cover, and they never think about reading from cover to cover. It's the most important book in their life, they will affirm without question. They put it under their arms more than any other book. But to think of reading from cover to cover, not bad. And if they would, they'd be proud of that. The first country mentioned in the Bible, Genesis 2, verse 13, is Ethiopia. The first country. In your Bible, this Ethiopia might be called Cush, C-U-S-H or K-U-S-H. Any authoritative source will let you know that Cush is the ancient name for Ethiopia. Genesis 2, verse 13. Just statistically speaking, Egypt and Ethiopia are mentioned more in the Bible than any other country, starting with Israel. Just statistically speaking. This confusion comes to such a ludicrous height that when you go into African churches, you will see a picture of a white Jesus. Now, my job is not to quibble about the color of Jesus, but the statement I make is a correct statement. Nowhere in the Bible, nowhere in the history of Jesus Christ, peace be upon his name, do we see him in Europe. He never put his foot there. Never put his foot in Europe. As a matter of fact, if you would look at history properly, he could be just about any color. But the one color he definitely could not be is the color that capitalism always paints him, white. And African Christians accept yours. African Christians hanging on their wall, on their keychains, in their churches. And if you talk about it, say, why are you making trouble? What difference does color make? You don't make no difference, but why can't they come another color? Sometimes. That's not just as the Bible said he had hair like a wolf's lap. Just once in a while, put some wool lap on his head. Let the brother. A wool lap is good for dreadlocks. Well, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon his name, was in great trouble and had to retreat after preaching the just principles of his religion in Dekab by the feudal lords. His disciples found refuge in Ethiopia and Africa. We have just in passing given you just some of Africa's great contributions, only in one field alone, the field of religion. The first sacred book in the world was given to the world by Africa. The belief in one God, monotheism, was given to the world by Africa. Judaism, the religion of Judaism, chronologically speaking, the first universal Religion, which monotheism, was given to the world by Africa. Christianity was stabilized for the world of Africa, and Islam was saved for the world of Africa in time of danger. Tell me which man, which woman, atheist, knowing these facts, will not respect Africa. Anytime you find an African who doesn't respect Africa, it's an ignorant African. Their job is not to get angry with them, but to stimulate them to want to know something about Africa. Once they've done that, they'll be very proud to be African. African students, this is your responsibility. And you stay squarely your responsibility upon your shoulders. Your responsibility is to give to the masses of your people the truth about Africa, so that they can be proud about their history. Once an African student is proud of Africa, proud of the contributions to African ancient history, they can sit down next to any German student of extract German and feel just as proud, because Africa has made contributions to humanity just as Germany, and they will not feel inferior. But as long as your people have not made any contribution to history, as long as Hegel can say Africans made no contribution to history and leave it like that, we will always feel inferior since we are reading these history books. All right, we come to a conclusion. We can only arrive at freedom when we're organized. This is a serious point. We can only arrive at freedom when we're organized. And if our people have any problem with this, we are disorganized. We are disorganized. As a matter of fact, if you will study our struggle for freedom, you will see nothing but spontaneous hops. Just as happened on this university, this college campus. Now, I don't know very much about Dekab, but I'm sure what I say is true. I don't know how many African students you have here, but I'm sure that if you have, let's say, 300, let's say 50, whatever your number is, I am certain, this is a percentage, less than 2% are actively involved in an African student organization. I am certain of this. I am certain that every meeting of your African student organization, the faithful come, and they work for the rest of you. Now the rest of you lollygag, go along every day, Once in a while, there's a racist instance. Some white man says something bad to a sister. In that minute, everybody comes together. People the open talk. We gotta do something. We can't go. And for 1 minute, I mean y'all are hot. Y'all can burn down the school for that 1 minute. And then after the problem is solved, y'all sit down, go back to relaxing, and the faithful few continue. This is our biggest weakness as a people. We struggle spontaneously in response to the enemy. This is our people the open talk. We gotta do something. We can't go. And for 1 minute, I mean y'all are hot. Y'all can burn down the school for that 1 minute. And then after the problem is solved, y'all sit down, go back to relaxing, and the faithful few continue. This is our biggest weakness as a people. We struggle spontaneously in response to the enemy. This is our biggest weakness as a people. We struggle spontaneously against provocation by the enemy. Look at the Rodney King rebellion. Look at how stupid we are as a people. We didn't even think about it. Not even the night before, you might have to rebel against the what do you think about it? How did we thought about it? We might have stopped some gasoline from other cocktails. It's only normal. We might have got some bricks ready. We would have figured out where the highest buildings in our community, put snipers. I mean, just simple things. Nothing big, nothing elaborate. But we didn't think about it at all. Rodney King going away was just another straw that broke the camel's back, and together as a people who had unity of action but lacked unity of thought, we got up and went after it. If you look throughout our history, that's the way we perform. Spontaneously we respond. Then we sit down. Hitler said, you can tell a lie 1,000,000 times and the people will come to think it's true. Revolutionaries say, tell the truth a couple of times and we'll smash 1,000,000 lives. And that's exactly what the 1,000,000 and more march did in October. Before that march, capitalism had a field day with us. All they do is cut each other, violence, they don't care about each other, blah, blah, blah. But the 1,000,000 and more march in one day put all that to rest. Look, the 1,000,000 and more march was a mobilized event, not organized. And here again, you see unity of action, no unity of thought. This is not people's problem. We have unity of action, but we lack unity of thought. And in order to make revolution, you must have unity of action and unity of thought. The struggle of the All African People's Revolutionary Party is to bring unity of thought to our people. Now we know your bourgeois scholars will always lie to you. Oh, you know, people can't think alike. Nonsense. Who in this room doesn't think that 2 plus 2 is 4? When truth is established, you must think alike. They want to make it as if there's no such thing as social truths. That, you know, they're just social way of life, and people think what they want to think, and what they want to think is what they think, and that makes it true. More lies, more confusion. There are social truths. One of these social truths is that when the people are oppressed, they will fight, always, changing their forms, but always for their liberation. The indigenous people in this country, the American Indians, they are fighting today every step of the way. Just because their struggle is not put on CNN, don't think they're not struggling. You make a big mistake. Some of their great warriors, like Leonard Peltier, still sits in jail over 20 years for a crime he didn't commit, put in there by the unjust FBI scum of the race of Every day they're fighting, even against little mascots like things like Redskins and all this, which come to, of course, degrade them. They're fighting. Africans have a responsibility to fight shoulder to shoulder with the indigenous people of this country. In Africa, we say the greatest crime you can commit is being ungrateful. And when we came to this country, the only place we found sanctuary was among the indigenous people of this country. They risked everything for us. Then began risk their nations as the Seminoles in Florida, as we all know. Therefore, now that they're fighting, we have a responsibility to stand shoulder to shoulder with them and fight for them. They're the only race that we've had mutual relationships with, the only one. I say all the time, the most beautiful mixture you see among Africans is those of Africans and indigenous people, because that came out of mutual love. All the others came out of rape, hatred, and disrespect for Africans. We must be organized to come to our conclusion. I organized with the All African People's Revolutionary Party. Organized. All my life I'm organizing. I have just one task: organize the masses of my people, because I know it's them and them alone who make revolution. You must not get confused. America lets you think that one man, one woman makes revolution. Nothing is further from the truth. One man, one woman never make revolution. Revolution is made only by the masses of people. If one man can make revolution, this man here, Willie Ricks, Bukasa, he would have made revolution a long time ago for the people. Would you done it, brother? No doubt about it. But he didn't make as much as one neighbor. And he been out to struggle for the people a long time. So he can. If a revolution can be made by one person, brother, Akbar Mohammed would have made it. Would you made it, brother? That's right. I would have done it. But revolution is made only by the masses of people, so they must be organized. I come to ask you to join the All African People's Revolutionary Party, and I tell you now, our party is a revolutionary party. We want the most conscious. Of course, when we make deals like this to people, we get few people who want to join because, you know, but we want to hit them hard. If you don't join our organization, you better join another organization fighting for your people. So we don't want you to think that we're sectarian, not us. We want our people organized. If you don't belong to the All African People's Revolutionary Party, you should belong to the Nation of Islam. If you don't belong to the Nation of Islam, you should belong to the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. But if you care about your people, you should belong to something fighting for your people. I don't want you to let capitalism confuse you and let you think about your people and not about the organization for your people. If you're not in charge in an organization working for your people, you can't think nice things about your people. Stop lying to yourself. The only way you can think about it is when your organization working for. I'm going to conclude, but let me tell you. All the bad brothers and sisters I know in history belong to organization. Right. I mean, all of them. I don't know any world historical figure who doesn't belong to organization. Karl Marx, rough as he was, he belonged to organization. V.I. Lenin, he belonged to the Bolshevik Party, rough as he was. Stalin, as great as he was, he belonged to organization. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, created organization, Nation of Islam. The Honorable Marcus Garvey, organization. Harriet Tubman, organization. Sojourner Truth, organization. Rosa Parks, organization. Angela Davis, organization. Asaka Shaku, organization. Martin Luther King, organization. Nelson Mandela, as big and great and popular as he is, belongs to the African National Congress. Everywhere you will look, you will find great men and women who truly appreciate life belonging to organizations. Malcolm X so loved organizations that when he left the Nation of Islam, he created two organizations, the Muslim Muslim Incorporated and the Organization of African American Unity, headed after the Organization of African Unity. Ever since I've been of a tender age, I have always belonged to organization. Because I know when you fight capitalism, it's a vicious system. The police will shoot you in your back. Therefore, you have to have at least one other covering your back. But you brothers and sisters, y'all some bad brothers and sisters. Honey, y'all are bad. Y'all done let Rambo and Superman take over your minds. Y'all think by yourself you can get the struggle done. Whoop everybody. There's no such thing as Rambo and Superman, only in the capitalist media will you find it. Everywhere else is the cooperative actions of the people that advance justice. If you want to join organizations, we conclude by making the appeal. And the statement in the back, for those of you who want to join the All-African People's Revolutionary Party, and we tell you, if you don't join our party, you better join another organization working for the people. We thank you. We stand ready for the revolution.
Dr. Kwame Ture for being with us here today, inviting us, informing us, presenting us with information, and hopefully we can turn into knowledge. My name is Pamela Perkins, and I'm the advisor for the African American Student Association here on campus. And we again want to give him a warm round of applause. We have gone a little bit over time. However, I would like to entertain a couple of questions from individuals that would like to question Dr. Ture. If you have a question, I would ask that you please line up here, down at the ends of both aisles, and there are microphones set up to entertain your questions. But I'm going to ask that you please ask only one question until other members of the audience have an opportunity to ask one question. And then if there's more time, we'll take about maybe 10 minutes worth of questioning. And if there's more time available, feel free to ask more than one, as long as Dr. Ture has time to entertain questions. But before that, I'm going to ask Minette Davis, the president of the African American Student Association, if she would come up to make a special presentation.
The American Student Association would like to thank Dr. Ture for informing us today. In appreciation, I would like to present you with this honorary t-shirt. On the front of it has the African American Student Association logo, and on the back it has number 8. You may ask, why are we presenting him with number 8? But those of you that are familiar with numerology, number 8 means new beginnings. And
other special presentation that will be made this time by Minister Jamal Muhammad from the Atlanta representative of the Honorable Louis Farrakhan.
Brothers and sisters, assalamu alaikum. I'm Brother Jamil from the mosque here in Atlanta, and I just want to say a word of presentation or something to Brother Kwame. He has been, as Minister Farrakhan informs us, every time he has an opportunity, one of the bulwarks of the struggle of our people and his collectivism and universality and understanding of the applicable nature of every single weapon in our arsenal against injustice and oppression has earned him the right of our acceptance of what he said today. Wasn't it beautiful? Give him another round of applause. And as we are here today as one united community who love truth, our sisters from the MGT and PCC have one presentation that they would like to make to Brother Kwame on behalf of all of the members of the Nation of Islam here in Atlanta and in the southern region. And certainly we appreciate Mr. Farrakhan allowing us to learn how to appreciate our brothers. So this is a presentation on behalf of all the brothers and sisters of the nation. And once again, we ask that we applaud our brother for his sacrifice and struggle.
I don't need you in here.
I thought you were here too. One more. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Dr. Kwame Ture? If so, please come down to the microphone.
In Atlanta and Washington, D.C. Thank you for all those great years, Secretary Value, African Liberation League, African Squad. My question is this. My children and most of the children in my immediate family are college age and high school age right now. We have given them, we think, all the tools, the books, the examples, history, structure. And what we're finding, not just me, my cousin's children, my brother's children, is that our children seem to be very angry. Not just angry at the world, they're angry at me. They're angry at my mother, at my father. And, sir, I do not understand what's going on. I want to cry when I talk about this. This is tearing us up. The young men in our family, when we say something, they want to hit me. And I've given them respect all their lives. My daughters are more concerned about their cars and their clothes. What is going on, and first of all, and what can we do collectively? Because this something has to be done collectively about this.
Thank you.
Point is well appreciated. You have to understand that the problems are a problem between you and your children, between you and capitalism. And the children have been viewed philosophy and capitalism. Perhaps the error was that in giving them all the history, truly you didn't give them an anti-capitalist education. But knowing this, the best way to resolve the problem is to find yourself in an anti-capitalist organization where you will learn some of the means of how to politically educate your children to see the loopholes in capitalism and to become anti-capitalism. That is, to put it badly, you have to now show your daughters that you are more important than their cars and their material. That's what it boils down to. And this can only be done through a process, listen to the 3 words, of constant political education. Constant political education, because your children have been constantly politically educated to see things as more important than people. From their television shows, from their school, from the churches where they go to see who wears what dress, etc., etc., etc. So their training has been ubiquitous, everywhere, all the time. It's been constant. So you have to be just as constant in it. We say all the time as an example that there's no child in America 7 years or older who doesn't know about Coca-Cola. And Coca-Cola doesn't stop singing jingles or putting up Coca-Cola signs. So we must be just as serious in our aspect of constant education as Coca-Cola is about having this kind of Coca-Cola.
Yes.
I am Don Kwame, my wife, who was once we are the ambassadors for the con is birth, represent my country. Kwame Carmichael. First of all, I want to say welcome here to this area of Babylon. You come with a very long history. I share sort of that because we moved back in the 50s and the 60s, trying to bring these people together. One of the things I noticed here in this area is the lack of communication and unity among African people who struggle with the point. We are caught here in the Bible Belt. And we are bombarded by Afro-Saxon mentality to divide us. Can you give some encouragement or some directions to our young people and some of our older people here on how we can better cooperate and unify our struggle so that we can free ourselves?
The All-African People's Revolutionary Party has been working for over 3 decades on a system in which we want to put together all the organizations in the United Front. We've been opposed without any breathing ground by Zionism in the first order. But we're strugglers. Over 3 decades we're struggling. We think that the All-African People's Revolutionary Party, now with the help of the Nation of Islam, has an active position where this can become a reality. Once this is finally completed on the local level, we will do that. But in the meantime, these local organizations must be fighting to form common fronts. One of the damages created by COINTELPRO, which I have not seen underlined anywhere, is not just the destruction of organizations, but the destruction of the relationships between organizations. This has been thoroughly destroyed in the 60s, and the All-African People's Revolutionary Party has taken upon our shoulders the task of rebuilding this. That's why you will see us in such actions as National Fronts for Africans Against in America, the Worldwide African Anti-Zionist Funds, trying everywhere to create these funds within the African community so that we get all the organizations talking to each other. We do not see how it's possible that the head of the NAACP in this country cannot have meetings and talk to Minister Louis Farrakhan at least once in a while. We just don't see how that's possible. We know there's our enemies who keep us apart here. Zionism is the leading force, but we intend to take a struggle against Zionism without pity, without mercy, and bringing that in front of all our people. Therefore, on the local level, you must be struggling with this one.
Speaking about the influence of hip-hop, positive hip-hop and hip-hop culture on the youth in reference to a lot of the lyrics. They have a lot of rappers, very hardcore revolutionary. In the city, you can see like spray paints on the wall, things like Free Media, videotape the local police. What do you think about that and its influence on the youth, and also how it's received by the local youth?
So this is a cultural question, must be properly understood. No artist creates culture or music. Michael Jackson didn't create music. He takes the music that we gave him and interprets. That's what he does. No other artist creates music. We are the people who do that. We're the most powerful. Now, as a people, our culture is a fighting culture. Therefore, any artist who represents us must represent us in a fighting culture. Anytime they sing about love this and love that, not about fight this and fight that, they've already betrayed their people. So those who do not sing songs of encouragement to set us into struggle against injustice, but sing, they say, well, we just trying to make the people happy. Well, if I'm a slave and you try to make me forget oppression, 1 minute, you're against me. So when you say you want to make the slave happy, all you're saying is you want to work for the enemy, because you should not encourage the slave to be happy in slavery for 1 second. If you're a friend of the slave, he must always keep an intention against slavery every second. So he wants to break out of slavery all the time. Now it even becomes worse because since we do not control our culture, the enemy uses our culture against us. So they find these little young kids and tell them, you want to make money, you got to sing about sex and violence. If you don't sing about sex and violence, you ain't going to make no money, you're not going to be on TV, ain't nobody going to distribute you. So unfortunately, these young brothers and sisters, not of any ideological worth, sell their people's culture. Sell their people's culture for 30 pieces of silver and a hot minute on TV. That's precisely what it boils down to. Here, of course, is the question of education. We have to educate them not to sell their people's culture. That they must use people's culture to advance the people's struggle. When you do that, you will get no money, you will get no fame, you will get no television. But the price is working for the people, and the reward is found in that price. You get your rewards of working for the people while working for the people. So those hip-hop artists, those others who are positive, we have to appreciate them. There's no question there. We have to wage a fight against the negative ones who sell their people's culture just so they can be seen on TV.
Mr. President, my name is Nicole, my son, Ashton, and I'm in a kind of dilemma I wish you could help me with. I have a twofold question. One of the things that I come from New York, and one of the things that I've encountered here is the educational system. The educational system here educates, in Georgia per se, educates our African children the same way they did in South Africa. When I've approached parents about this, I'm called a malcontent and a troublemaker. And I'm proud to join the other malcontents and troublemakers of our kind. The other question I'd like to ask you is, can you be a Christian and a revolutionary?
I'm going to take your second question first. As a matter of fact, if you are a Christian, you must be a revolutionary. You must be a revolutionary. There is no Christian who can be a Christian without being a revolutionary. Because Jesus Christ, peace be upon his name, came to fight against oppression. He came to fight against injustice. He came to feed the hungry. He came to take care of the poor. He came to minister among the prostitutes. He came to change these conditions. That's what Jesus Christ, peace be upon his name, was about. He was about changing the conditions of earth so they reflect that which should be in heaven. That means getting rid of all injustices. So any Christian who's not a revolutionary is not a Christian. That's clear. They have to be. The education system, this will only change once we organize ourselves and take over the education systems. And I've seen what we've done once we've been spontaneous. I know what we'll do once we are organized. You look at that rebellion in Los Angeles. The Rodney King Rebellion, you think that wasn't even organized. They didn't even think about it. Do you know what they will do when they think about it?
Revolution, fighting is generally considered to be a means to an end. And my question to you is, first of all, what is the ultimate end to our fighting in this country? I mean, are we only fighting for a piece of the pie, so to speak, or is there a greater goal we should be fighting for? And the second question, my second part of the question is, what goal Most High has now?
I'd like to say blessings to the Creator and yourself. It's a blessing to be in your presence. A couple of questions, or better still one question is something I'd like to say to you.
See why she says one question, they all know a dumb question.
We have about 7
Make
minutes.
it real quick. I'll make it real quick. I have a challenge. First of all, my name is LaCount Holmes, and I'm a motivational speaker. This time is very, very fitting, I must say, because this week I'm going to Arizona State University to speak on Kwanzaa. They're going to, Black Greek Society is going to talk about how Kwanzaa should fit with our people throughout the year, not from December 26th to January 1st. So this is quite fitting. The challenge that I have presently is that, as you very well know, this is the Bible Belt, and many of the pastors spoke totally against the Million-Man March. So I'd like to find out what you're feeling about that, because to me that ain't God. That last but not least, 28 years ago, which I'm 46 years of age right now, young, I had the privilege of standing right next to you at Roosevelt High School in Washington, D.C. in the auditorium, my brother. So this is truly a blessing. I just want to say that to you.
Thank you. Thanks. Thanks. Roosevelt is a good warrior.
Yes, good morning. Yes.
Those who condemn the Million March are not Christians. That's correct. Because any march for the uplift of humanity must be supported by all Christians. And it was even nonviolence. They didn't even have any excuse for it. Christianity, of course, is corrupted, and the main corruptors are the ones in the pulpits, especially our preachers. Most of the jackleg preachers using the church to get Cadillacs and silk suits. These are practices. So we must expect that most of them in the Bible Belt will bow to Caesar and not to the wishes of their people. But there's no questioning that the million-long march was an overwhelming success that shocked everyone by spinning them to higher levels of inspiration. So they can speak out against it. They're just condemning something in history which they can do nothing about, which already passed them by. They're not, as we said, they're not preachers, and what we have to do is start building up strong enough Christians inside the church to challenge these jackleg preachers and run around the pulpit. I mean, run around the pulpit. If they're not doing nothing for the people, they'll run out the pulpit. I want to tell you that we're not fighting for a piece of the pie, not us, or to be fighting America's unjustified, so I don't fight for a piece of any unjustified. We're fighting to transform America into a society where there's no exploitation of one man another. This is incumbent upon us. If you are a slave and you just stop slavery for yourself, not for others, you're not advanced humanity. The only way you advance humanity is that when you as a slave destroy slavery so no other human being, not even your master, can be made a slave again. This is the only time you will advance humanity. So there'll be no need for us to fight for a piece of the American pie, get a big piece, sit down, act just like the others, and look at this, somebody else come and fight us for it. This is not advanced humanity. The way to advance humanity is to transform America so that there are no homeless in the richest country in the world. The way to fight, what we're fighting for is to transform America so that there nobody who's left out in America in the world. Everybody will have equal opportunity, equal access of every aspect of life in America. So that's what we're fighting for. And the question, the Most High, depends upon your own religious beliefs. They are revolutionaries, great revolutionaries who are atheists. Fidel Castro is a great revolutionary, he's an atheist. They are revolutionaries who are religious. Muammar Gaddafi is a great revolutionary, he's a Muslim. Second Ture was a Muslim. So the question of God and the Most High is just a question of your own personal belief when it comes to revolution. As Malcolm says, you put religion in the closet. But if you believe in the Most High, then you should be out front fighting for the principles of the Most High, which are those of justice. If you don't believe in the Most High and you're a human being with consciousness, you should be out front on the front lines fighting for justice. So if you're religious, the Most High goes with you. If
not religious, he doesn't know what you go along anyway to fight against injustice.
When we look at America militarily, economically, politically, socially, it's on the verge of collapse. And why do we as a people continue to try to uphold America? When do we begin to look beyond the shores of America for some greater solace for our people? And also, when Moses delivered the children of Israel out of Egypt, you spoke about unity of action, but not unity of thought. There was unity of thought, and there was a standard that was established to govern the people. Who is our Moses of today, and what are our standards of today that we should rally around to for the souls of our people?
All right, the first question, what's good with our body? The North African People's Revolutionary Party presents you as Africa as a solution to our problems. We said what Dr. Martin Garvey said years ago, until Africa is free, no African, even the ones attending Dekab, will be free. So we're quite clear on that. Your second question.
You spoke about unity of action, not unity of thought.
Yeah, who should be our Moses today? As a people, we must look more to an organized force than to leadership. This is one of our weakness. Because we're weak, we look to leaders, not to organization. This represents weakness. The Pope is certainly the leader of the Catholic Church. But if the Pope was shot today, the Catholic Church will not quiver. The old bishops will come together, bless the old Pope, elect a new Pope, and the Church will continue. Clinton is President of the United States. If he was shot today, the United States would not quiver. Paul would be disclosed, the Vice President, he comes to the President, and go on. We're the only people who, when our leaders are wounded or shot or betray us, then we go into confusion. And the reason is because we lack organization. Therefore, we must come to supersede this. We must come to get organization. And these organizations will come to leaders. No matter who the leader is, when the leader is betrayed or died, shot, killed, assassinated, we just pick another leader and continue along the path. So our Moses must be, if you will, organization. Our standard must be the same. Advance humanity at all times and all.
Ture. My question is, as far as looking at the geopolitical space of ghetto and para-apartheid that's going on in America right now, I mean, how do you think that we should go about shifting the view of the Anglo, African American, whatever, towards buying more property, the urbanization that we've been undergoing? You know what I'm saying? When everything is defended and this is the pressure, where will the blacks go? If we don't own any land, we'll be landless by the year 2000, what you suggest?
Well, now, you know, it's the landless that makes revolution. I have no problem with it. We have made a lot of gains, but the gains we've made have been through spontaneous organizations. Now, through spontaneous performance. Once you're spontaneous, you made gains. All the enemy has to do is wait until the spontaneous spread out, and then they eat up the gains. But when they eat up the gains, it just puts people back into motion. What we want to do from this time is, instead of making spontaneous motion, making organized motion. So even if we're landless, once we're organized, we can get land. If you just look through history, a lot of landless people always get land when they rise up as peasants and serfs, etc. So we've been having history to give us a guide. One that is lacking, I want you to see, is the lack of organization we have. Because this lack of organization allows the enemy to do anything he so well pleases to do with us. Even to strengthen Mr. Louis Farrakhan from the NAACP or from the Urban League is a result of our lack of organization. It's only when we come to correct this as a people by becoming an organized people that all these things will come to pass. Matter of fact, once we're organized, the question of land becomes no question of all. Could you imagine a million or more people going to Washington, we ain't needed to get some land, and they come prepared? I mean, for anything, for everything, we get some land overnight. So it's simply a question of organization. So we end on that note. We wish to thank you all. We wish to tell you if you can do any good for us, we enjoy organizations working with you. And to tell you that the only way you'll advance your people's cause is by doing that. Don't let America carry you with the individualism. Individuals can do nothing and their work goes to nothing. But once you're an organization, once you're dead, the organization carries on your work. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, peace be upon his name, was passed a long time ago, but the Nation of Islam continues its great work. If there was no Nation of Islam, he would put it away. This is just an example to you. Therefore, that's your work. Do not put it away. You must belong to organizations. We're going to keep pushing this because we know our people will be organized. Until they're organized, they cannot be free. We want freedom, therefore we push you to organization. Thank you, join an organization, ready for revolution.
I'd like to please remind you about the special tribute to Dr. Kwame Ture tomorrow night at 7 p.m. The information sheets are out on the table. Please make sure that you pick up a sheet, pass it on to someone else, or pick up an envelope to be able to do your part to support this great brother in the struggle of freedom for all people. I'd also like to say, as a party note, he talked about organizations. One of the organizations that are available to you right here on campus is the African American Students Association. And yes, we have less than 2% of our membership here on campus as viable members. You need to get involved. Otherwise, we cannot bring to you the type of quality presentations that we've done today. We need numbers. So we thank you, and we just ask for your continued support. And thank you again, Dr. Kwame Ture.